Hello guys, welcome back to part 3 of how to create a token for Roll20. Today we will block in the colors on our line art and we will add some shading. So let's get started. This is our line art layer. Let's make sure we lock it so we don't accidentally paint on top of it. It has happened to me a couple of times in the past. And if you did your line art correctly, you can easily block in the colors by using the magic wand. And you have to select these parts at the bow, and this will do manually, so this should work. So let's just see how that looks for now. I made a mistake. I wanted to show how it looks still with my selection. It didn't show up somehow. Come on. So we have to invert the selection, and there you see it. Let's put it beneath the layer. One of the problems by doing it this way is you will actually have a little bit of an edge outside of your line art, and that doesn't look really clean. So to solve that, we take this selection and we select modify, contract, and we will contract by 1 pixel, select inverse and delete it. So now it's a little bit cleaner. What we will have to do for little pieces, like for example the ear, we will do it manually, but I want this selection to be outputted in a group, and then in this group, which we will call color, we will add a base layer of 50% gray, because then whenever I miss a little bit of the coloring, it will not show 50%, or it will not show completely white, and it will not show completely black. It will show a really neutral color, this gray. And now we will refine the mask a little bit with a brush. So I saw a little bit of a problem at the ear. And over here at the arrows, let's see. And here, let's see if there's any other parts that need fixing. Zoom out a little. I can see here a little underneath the arm. Usually whenever there are sharp corners, you need to tighten up the mask a little. Like here. And underneath the arm. So now when we start to color in a layer in this group, we will have we'll stay within these lines, which is really nice. So this is base layer, and right now I'll just add some layers. So hair, skin, and it's easiest to work from top to bottom. So hair layer on top, skin layer underneath that, armor, let's do leather, and let's do bow 1 and bow 2. Okay, let me drag this up a little so you can see what we're doing. So we'll start with the hair. As you may know, the drow we are trying to draw, they have white hair. If you go completely white, you won't see any shading, so we will go with a nice, maybe even add a little bit of bluish color, and we'll start drawing in the hair. and it doesn't matter really if the color is a little bit off, because we work neatly in layers like this, it's really easy to go afterwards and just change the color of a layer. There we go. And my experience is that you always have to go in a little bit later to fix any little mistakes that you have made. Because we're using a bright white, it's really hard to see at the moment if you make any small mistakes, but it will show up later. The nice thing though is because we use, so let's say I forget to draw in a little bit here, right? So just erasing this bit. So let's say I just forget a little bit of this. You don't see it too badly because we've got this 50% gray layer underneath. The eyebrows. And there's, yeah, you can make your tokens as detailed as you want. I always like to work on a 512 by 512 canvas, because that's the, I think half of it is what Roll20 suggests for a small token. So if your token is 1 by 1 square, you do it, let's calculate. Okay, the half of 512, and then I actually like to double it to give the things a little bit more details, and then yeah, you can go even more detailed, but this canvas size works good for me. 560, sorry, so half of it is 250 plus 30 is 280. My maths, my mathematics is awesome. Wow, I'm so proud of myself. So 280 is what they suggest for a 1 by 1 token. I like to double it. If you go any bigger, you get problems, because the maps and the pages will take too long to load. So this looks cool. Now for the skin, they kind of have this charcoalish black skin color. So let's try this. And because we're working in this, I can just be a little bit rough around the hair, because I already blocked that in on top. That's a nice thing of working on layers like this. So one thing that I'm trying to remember is what eye colors do Drow have. I probably have to Google that real quick. I think it may be red. So will this be, yeah, I think this will also be skin. It could have been really thin leather on top of her skin, but I think I'm going for skin. And you see, over here I see a little mistake that I've made at the shoes. So I can fix it real quick. Back to the skin. There we go. Hands. erase a little bit of the I added a little bit too much skin around the braces, so I erase that. And this is really where pen pressure of the Wacom really gives you so much benefit, because excuse me, you can just use a really thick brush and just get into those little corners. I mean, you can do it even when you have a real thick brush. You can do really fine details. Okay, so that's the skin. Let's create eye, and let me just really quickly Google on my second screen. Drow eyes were usually bright red, but some had different colored, often much paler eyes, such as blue, lilac, pink and silver. Okay, so I guess we'll go with red. So, one tip that I can give you, excuse me, on my throat. One tip that I can give you is, if you want your gal or guy to look up to the camera, you just add your eye over here. But if you want to create the impression that he's looking forward, you create it more at the bottom. The, what do you call it? Iris. And what is nice to add a little bit of a highlight, twinkle in the eye. Let's see how that looks. Pretty cool, if I say so myself. And if you want to add maybe a little bit of a more fiery glow, you can add just a little bit of color around. Maybe even a hint of blue. Yep, I like that. So next up is the armor. What color should her armor be? So I want to make it. I want to distinguish between this part of the armor and the underlaying bit. So I'll just draw this in, and I actually have no idea. It should be a leathery color. I'm gonna quickly search for some color inspiration on my second screen. Just typing in Drow and see if there's any artwork that I really like. And that's what I suggest you do as well. Just find a lot of reference. So I can't show you because of copyright issues, but I will just drag this in my second screen, and then I will just sample some colors that I really like. So I find a cool picture of a drow with an armor color that I like. Let's see. Then I just sample it. And again, if I don't like it, I can easily change it later, as long as I've blocked it in. So I kind of like this wine red. Make my brush a little bit smaller so I can get into these tight corners. Cool. And I'll do the same for the neck piece. I like it, I like it. And let's see, where else can we add this? Maybe it's a cool color for the boots. And I also want it on the shoulder pads, but not on the outer line, just this, the main bit of the shoulder pads. So it's kind of bleeding in here. Let me just fix that by painting more skin. There we go. Cool. So next will be the other leather. So let me check what color will be cool. A purplish color. So this is one of the situations where I look at it and I think I don't like it. So what we can do is we can just hue and saturate this thing till we get something that we do like. I like this a bit better already, and maybe we can just also tone up the I just moved my Photoshop a little. Let's move it back. Oh no, it did show my fuck! It did show the copyright. God damn it! The one that I'm picking colors from. Okay. I'm just checking my OBS window. So even though I dragged it to the other screen. So what I will do is I will just make sure that I'll add all the credits for this guy Hopefully he won't sue me. Damn. It was on my other screen. So I only sampled colors from his artwork. And this man is GP Balmet. No, it's not. God damn you, Pinterest. So how can I find this original image? Let me just do a quick Google. Also I'll have to start this whole stream over. I won't do it. So let's see. Can't find it. It is Balmet, yeah, it is GP Balmet. Let me quickly check, because this is important. Yeah, it's GP Balmet. So if you want to check out his artwork, it's really cool. It is gpbalmet.com, and I will also add a link to his page in the description of this video. I was just sampling colors. Okay, but his stuff is really cool. So let me change the hue and saturation of this part. I actually still like the wine red. The only thing where I don't like it is at the edge of the leather piece here. So maybe something metallic, like a little rim. So. So let's add one more layer. We'll call it metal. And let's try something silverish or maybe copper color. And we can also add that to the bow. I'll probably change this color, but let's just block it in. And do it at the tip of the arrow. So let's change this color around. And then we want to add a color of the wood of the bow and the arrow and a color for the feathers. So I think for the feathers I will just add the same reddish tint. Sometimes when you are drawing in, you see that there's little pieces of refinement that's needed on a mask, but that's good. Sometimes you probably wouldn't really see that details at the end, but or consciously, but unconsciously it just looks so much nicer if you refine it properly. Okay, wood. The nice thing about the wood is that we can just, because we did everything else, we can just work it in like this. I like this color. Cool. So this is it for the base colors. So next we will do some shading, and this is really where the guy comes alive, or the girl comes alive. What I do is I use a lot of actions for my drawing, but what I actually do is just to show you what the action does. Let me get the action. So the action that I use is, let's see. This is what I do. So it gives me a color and it gives me 2 extra layers on top. And basically they are, so let me do it for the, we won't shade the eyes, let me do it for the skin. So I make a layer, put it on multiply, create a clipping mask, so it only affects the underneath layer, and do the same, create a clipping mask for an overlay layer. And then I also give it a color to make it more clear. So purple for the overlay, green for the multiply, and red for the main layer. And you can just record actions for that, so it makes life a lot easier. Feathers and bow. What I do then is I will add a layer on top with a couple of shades of gray that I will use in the shading of the character. So add one that's 65. I could also make an action for that. I'll add one that's 75. And I will add one that's 85. And usually I will just use the 75 one. But just to be sure I can sample from this, I have these others. And always remember to save. So Ctrl S. And I always start out with doing the multiply. So what I want is, first you figure out what direction your lighting is coming from. So let's imagine that the sun is coming from this way. And so let's add some 3-dimensionality to it. So let's imagine that it's coming from the top down like this. That's the direction of my light. So that means that everything that comes from here is a little bit lighter. And this will be a little bit darker. It helps to visualize these things. So, and samples. So just to keep that in mind, that's important when you start blocking in the shadowing. So let's get started. So this will all be shadow. This will be shadow. Around here will be some shadow. A tiny bit of shadow around the rest. And I'm absolutely not great at shading, but I will just show you the process anyway. And then some thinner shades to define the direction that the hair flows into. There we go. And a little bit of the eyebrows. Cool. Next up is the skin. A little bit of shadowing all around. Makes it pop out a little. And some shadows underneath the eyes. And the right side of the face will be more in shadow than the left side of the face. How does that look? That looks okay. The arms. A little bit under the armor. And then the hands. So what I like is to add some little lines that show strain of muscles and fingers. So that's the skin. Something's off over here. Let's see. That's better. I don't really like the nose. Okay. We can always tweak it a bit more later. Armor. So this will be a little bit more difficult. So the head will block in this. This will be the natural shade. And some lights on the hair. Shadow from the top layer. Natural shadows. Okay, sun, shade. Okay, shadow from the head. And we can add some stuff to the Spider-Man lines to make them pop a little. Important to get the breasts correct. I think this kind of works. Let's see, light coming from this direction. Yeah, this is okay. Let's not overthink it too much as well, because if you want to do it really correctly, you need to be a really good artist. And I've never had. I'm a graphic designer by study, and a photographer by trade, and I had some illustration at graphic design school, but I never really properly studied illustration. It's just something that I learned myself. So this is the leather underneath layer. Hey, what's up with this? Okay, leather underneath. Let's see. I think to make it work properly, it needs to be a little bit lighter. Else it's too dark for the shading. Oh. Let's go light. And also add some saturation. Yep. It's funny, I've got two screens, and on one screen I need to calibrate them better, because one screen shows them a little bit different. Okay, let's get into the shading. And because we're using these patches, we can get away with a lot. Getting there. The legs. I like it. The metal bits. So that's this, right? Yeah. I don't like this color either. We'll change it later. Okay. Feathers. And the bow. So I will probably use Laziness only for this. This is the program I haven't spoke of today. It's the program that I use for creating smooth lines. It has a function called pulled string, which gives you much more precision on the drawing. Cool. Oh, almost. So I think we're finished with shadows, and now we'll go do the highlights, and this is where we really start to see yeah, work to the final result. One of the most fun things to do is the hair. So you can do two things. You can just grab the 75% shade, and what also is a fun thing to do with overlay is grab the original lying underneath color. It will change. It somehow just works a little bit better because you get a little bit of color in there. Let's see. I want to work on 40% because that way you can actually layer the shine. Of the individual strands of hair. And I will just make it a little bit more bright to add some really fine shine to the hair. Giving it a silverish glow. I like it, I like it. Next up is the skin. I'm not sure what this will do. I think it will make it darker because it's a shade that is overlay kind of works in a way where it takes a shade, and if the shade is brighter than 50%, it makes the area more light, and if it's darker it makes it a little bit more dark, so you can use it for both shadows and highlights, but I usually just use it for highlights. So let's see, this is better. So skin by itself, oh, I want to go on 100%. Skin by itself is a little bit less glossy. So I'll probably turn it down a little. I'm still at 70%. So one of the techniques that I use is either just tone it down, which works, but I also like because it's a little bit more matte. and the reflections are on the skin aren't that they don't have those strong edges. So I kind of like to add a little bit of a blur to them and tone it down a little. And that's just enough to make it pop, if you know what I mean. I'll also remove a little bit with just an eraser. I like that. Next up is the armor. So if you imagine that this is some kind of metal, it would have really strong reflections like this, or even like a bit more round. Like this. But if it's more leathery, it will have more soft reflection, so we can add a blur or something like that. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, let's add a little bit of a blur. And sometimes I like to experiment with some texture. So I'll just go to the armor, blending options, patterns, and these are just textures that I've bought from textures.com. I think. Let me quickly check if that's correct. But there's a website where you can just buy textures. Really cool. Yeah, I bought them from textures.com. I kind of like this. And maybe just multiply. Or just screen, where we only see the lighter parts. I like that. Okay, let's check the leather. The leather layer. It's this layer. I'll do something similar. So I'll remove the light from everywhere where the shadow hits. So I'll kind of detract, how do you call that? I don't think that's proper English. But remove anything that's on the multiply layer. Make a basically reverse selection. And you get this. And we can also experiment with a little bit of texture. I kind of like that. So we're getting there, as you can see. One thing that I like about metal is you can do it with overlay. But what I also like is something called color dodge. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it kind of does something funky with the color that I really like. But we will probably need a different color of armor to make that, or metal to make that work. So let's change this color a little. I like that. So let's see if I can get to show you the effect that I mean. Yeah, exactly. This like saturated shine. It's like sometimes you see those cars where they turn in an angle, a different layer of paint underneath shows through, giving that really funky effect. This is kind of how I think that works. Hey, I didn't add any shadow here. So let's do it real quick. There you go. And we can even double up. So we'll add another clipping mask and use the overlay layer here and just add some more of an overlay. Let's see. We can also see what it does if I put the overlay layer underneath the color dodge layer. Yeah, I like that a lot. And we can also see what happens if there's any other color that we like. Cool. So next up is the feathers. Let's get our correct color and put it on 100% again. Cool. And the last thing we want to do is add a little shine to our bow itself and to our wood. So for our wood we can just use shift click to get a straight line. Cool. Alright. I think this is our girl. Next up we want to add a shadow layer. So it can add some three-dimensionality in. If you've got a really light background layer in your virtual tabletop, your character stands out more. And how I do that is I just copy, let's see, this layer. I make selection, put a black layer underneath, and I will start. You can. Oh fuck! I still have a. Oops! I swore. I don't want it. Beep. I want this layer to move, but if you do it like this, it's too flat. So we want to change that around a little. So I never do it perfectly, but I just play around a little. So I grab this, grab this, grab this, grab this, grab this, manipulate it a little, place it like this, get this layer, move it around like this a little. Grab this a little so it's a little bit more yeah, I try to get the three-dimensionality in a little bit more, and then I'll fill it in with a black brush. There you go. And then what I do is I blur it and I put it on a certain percentage. And I can't really remember the exact percentage, so I'll just quickly check my action that I normally use. So I blur it by 8 pixels. And I put it on 40%. And then I remove this layer and save it. Save as a PNG, so it's transparent. There we go. And now I can open up my Roll20, which I will do in the background. I hope. Yeah, I did. Let's see, let's drag my token in. I have to quickly remove the background layer because it is not mine artwork. There we go. And then I will search where I saved my curl. And I'm uploading. There we go. Yeah, one thing I've noticed that she's a little bit too small in comparison to the others, and I can just do that in my Photoshop later. But yeah, I think she looks pretty cool. One thing that I do want to show you before I decide to end this series is how easy it is to change your character colors after you block them all in like this. So right now we've got a drow woman, but let's say we want to do the same, but we want to make her an elf. Colorize to make sure I add some color to it. And change the eye colors to blue-green. Whoa! Clipping mask, please. change the armor colors to a bit less evil. So less evil colors. So let's check out the armor. Maybe a nice foresty green. Some leather. The metal bits to silverish or gold. Go for silver. Now let's go for gold or brass or something like that. And just the feathers. And last but not least, we change the bow to a cooler color. So right now we just changed our drow character to a female elf, which is really cool. There we go. So here we have our two new characters. Pretty cool, right? I hope I've taught you a little bit about how the process works to create a token for Roll20. I hope you enjoyed. You can check out my artwork by going to Roll20, to Roll20 Marketplace. Going to browse, and then you come on Roll20. You can do it. There we go. You type in Jan Loos, Jan space Loos. There you can see my stuff. Or you can check out my website, which is Online-Tabletop.com. I don't do that much at the moment, but I will do more in the future. I will teach you about how to be great tips to be a dungeon master, how to create cool looking maps, stuff like that. So I will teach things step by step. I hope you enjoyed, and see you later.